It started with a single missed call. Sarah was at home, finishing her nightly routine, brushing her teeth, and preparing for bed when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A missed call from an unknown number. The area code was unfamiliar. She hesitated, then shrugged it off. People dial the wrong number all the time, she told herself, and went to bed. At 2:17 a.m., the buzzing woke her up, the same number. Her groggy mind considered answering it, but instead, she let it go to voicemail. When she checked her notifications in the morning, there were two new messages, the voicemail and a text from the same number. The voicemail was blank, just a long stretch of static, then a faint clicking noise, like someone fumbling with a microphone. The text was only 3 words, "Why didn't you answer?" A chill ran down Sarah's spine, but she tried to brush it off as a prank. She blocked the number, hoping that would be the end of it. For the next few days, everything seemed normal. She went to work, met friends for coffee, and spent her evenings in front of the TV. It wasn't until Thursday night that the calls started again, now from a different number. Each time she blocked it, a new one would take its place. The texts grew stranger. "I'm still waiting," one read. "Don't ignore me," said another. Each time she tried calling the numbers back, but they never connected. Friday evening, Sarah got home from work exhausted. Her eyes felt heavy, and her thoughts were blurred from sleep deprivation. The relentless messages had been keeping her up at night. She tried to unwind, setting her phone aside and putting on some music. She made herself a glass of wine and settled onto the couch when her phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't a call or a text. It was a picture message from an unknown number. She clicked on it. The photo was grainy, taken from a low angle, and showed the front of her house, taken just minutes ago. Her heart pounded in her chest. Someone was outside. She rushed to the window, carefully pulling the curtain aside, but saw nothing. No movement. She double-checked the locks on all the doors, panic setting in, her pulse racing. She tried calling a friend, but before she could hit dial, another picture came in. This time, the angle was closer. It showed her porch. The police, she decided. She had to call the police. With trembling fingers, she dialed 911. As the dispatcher answered, her phone buzzed again. Another message. "No police." She froze. How could they know? She ended the call abruptly, not wanting to risk it. Fear gnawed at her as she backed away from the windows and turned off the lights. She sat in the dark for hours, waiting. Her phone clutched in her hand, but no more messages came that night. Sarah barely slept. In the morning, there was no trace of anyone outside. She tried to convince herself that it had been some elaborate prank, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. She stayed in that Saturday, keeping the curtains drawn and the doors locked. As evening came, she decided to take a shower, thinking it might calm her nerves. She left her phone on the bathroom sink, and while the hot water poured over her, she tried to relax. Then, over the sound of running water, she heard the faint buzz of a notification. She turned off the shower, her heart sinking, dripping wet. She reached for her phone. A new text from an unknown number. "Look behind you." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She spun around, but the bathroom was empty. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably now, and she fumbled as she opened the bathroom door. She moved cautiously down the hallway, but it was quiet, too quiet. She checked every room, but no one was there. When she returned to her bedroom, she saw the closet door was open, just a crack. She always kept it closed. Slowly, she walked towards it, holding her breath, and reached out with a trembling hand. She pulled the door open in one swift motion, but it was empty. In that moment, her phone buzzed again. Another picture. Her blood went cold. It was a shot of her, standing right there, looking into the closet, taken from the hallway behind her. She bolted for the front door, adrenaline pumping through her veins, but as soon as she grabbed the doorknob, another text came. "You can't run." She flung open the door and sprinted to her car. She locked herself inside and started the engine, but before she could drive away, the screen on her phone lit up one last time. It was a video call request. Every instinct screamed to decline it, but something inside her made her accept. The screen went dark for a moment. Then a distorted image appeared, a figure, face obscured by shadow, standing in her living room. Behind it, she saw the kitchen, then the hallway, and then her. The camera angle was wrong. It was from inside her car. She could see herself on the screen, holding the phone, a look of pure terror on her face. She whipped around, but the back seat was empty. Her phone slipped from her grasp and fell to the floor as she frantically threw the car into gear and peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. She didn't stop until she was miles away at a gas station, where she abandoned her car and phone, running for help. Weeks later, Sarah had moved to a new apartment in another city. She had changed her number, cut off social media, and tried to rebuild her life. The nightmares were getting better. She had started sleeping again. But one quiet evening, as she sat watching TV in her new living room, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She hesitated, a sinking feeling gripping her stomach. It was a text from an unknown number. The message was a single photo of her new apartment taken from the street below. At the bottom, a text read, "Found you." It was the night before Halloween, and Mike was driving home from his late shift at work. The clock on his dashboard read 1:34 a.m., and the deserted highway stretched out endlessly before him. His only company was the soft hum of the engine and the flickering streetlights overhead. Then his phone buzzed, a text notification. It was strange since no one would usually text him this late, but he ignored it, keeping his focus on the dark road. A few minutes later, another buzz. He picked up his phone at the next red light and saw it was from a number he didn't recognize. The message read, "I see you." He rolled his eyes, figuring it was some prank or spam. Without a second thought, he deleted it and continued driving, watching the empty road ahead. As he merged onto the final stretch of the highway, his phone buzzed again, twice in quick succession. Now annoyed, he glanced at the screen. "I'm closer now." And, "Look in your rearview mirror." The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He couldn't help it. His eyes darted to the mirror. There was nothing behind him, just the empty road lit by the occasional street light. His pulse quickened. It had to be a joke. Some friend trying to mess with him. He texted back, "Who is this?" and waited for a reply, but nothing came. Mike's house was only about 10 minutes away, and he drove faster, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on him. Just as he turned onto a quieter road that led into the suburbs, the phone buzzed again. He hesitated, but picked it up at a stop sign. Another text, just 2 words, "Too late." At that moment, his headlights caught movement, a figure in the middle of the road ahead. He slammed on the brakes, tires screeching, but when he looked again, the road was empty. His breathing was ragged, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He took a deep breath and continued driving, telling himself he was just tired, just imagining things. Finally, he pulled into his driveway, his porch light spilling a pool of yellow over the driveway. Relief washed over him as he parked and turned off the engine. He sat there for a moment, regaining his composure, before grabbing his phone and stepping out of the car. Another buzz. His stomach churned as he looked down at the screen. "Don't go inside." The message was accompanied by a photo of his house, taken from the perspective of someone standing right behind him. He spun around, heart hammering, but no one was there. The street was empty. He backed up against his car, eyes scanning every shadow. Finally, he sprinted up the steps and fumbled with his keys, rushing inside and slamming the door behind him. He locked every lock, bolted the windows, and turned on every light in the house. His phone rang suddenly, the loud ringtone shattering the silence. It was the same unknown number. Trembling, he answered. At first, there was silence, then a faint, ragged breathing. His own breath caught as he listened, heart thudding so hard he thought it might burst. Suddenly, a voice whispered, distorted and almost mechanical, "Don't look under the bed." He froze, standing in the living room with the phone pressed to his ear. The line went dead, replaced by the dull hum of static. His mind raced. He hadn't checked the bedroom. There was no way he was going to go up there now. He paced, unsure of what to do. Maybe it was just another prank. Maybe he should call the police. He typed out a message to 911, but hesitated, his thumb hovering over the send button. Then a loud thud echoed from upstairs, like something heavy falling to the floor. He dropped his phone, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He grabbed the nearest object, a fireplace poker, and crept towards the staircase. The house was silent again. With every step he took, the stairs creaked louder and louder until he reached the top. His bedroom door was ajar, the light inside casting a narrow strip onto the hallway floor. He pushed the door open slowly, every inch feeling like it took an eternity. The room was exactly as he'd left it, bed neatly made, everything in place. He scanned the room, his eyes locking onto the gap beneath the bed. It was pitch black, a void. His heart pounded in his ears as he got down on his knees, the poker shaking in his sweaty hands. He leaned in closer, closer, until he was inches from the floor, ready to look under the bed. Then, his phone buzzed again from downstairs. He jumped and backed away, dropping the poker with a clang. He hesitated only for a second before bolting down the stairs, grabbed his phone from the floor, and stared at the screen. The text message was just one word: run. The lights in the house flickered. Panic surged through him as he raced for the front door, yanking it open just as the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. He ran to his car, fumbled with the keys, and barely managed to get the door open before jumping inside and locking the doors. He tried starting the engine, but it wouldn't turn over. He looked up, and there, standing in the driveway, was a figure, motionless, its face obscured by the shadows. The phone buzzed in his hand. Another picture, this time a close-up shot of the car window. But there was no one in the driveway. He looked back up. The figure was gone. Suddenly, the passenger side door handle rattled. He screamed, dropping his phone, tried to start the car again, desperately turning the key. The engine roared to life, and he tore out of the driveway, not daring to look back. Hours later, when the sun began to rise, he finally pulled over at a diner on the outskirts of town, exhausted and trembling. He slumped into a booth, feeling a brief wave of relief that it was all over. He pulled out his phone, which had fallen under the seat, and checked the messages one last time. There were none. The inbox was empty. No texts, no missed calls, like they had never existed. He tried to convince himself that he was just sleep-deprived, that it had all been in his head. As he was about to order a cup of coffee, his phone buzzed once more. He glanced down at the notification, hands shaking. It was another text from an unknown number. "Nice drive. See you soon." He dropped the phone onto the table, backing away as if it were a snake ready to bite. As he did, he noticed something that made his blood turn to ice. There, smeared across the passenger window of his car outside the diner, was a single handprint, pressed hard against the glass from the inside. Jenna had just moved into a new apartment, a quaint one-bedroom on the top floor of an old brick building. It was a fresh start, her way of escaping a toxic relationship and beginning anew. The apartment was cozy, if a bit outdated, with creaky floorboards and a clawfoot tub. It had an old-fashioned charm, and for the first few weeks, she felt safe. Then the texts started. It was a rainy Saturday evening when the first message came. Jenna was curled up on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her, watching a horror movie on TV. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She grabbed it without thinking, expecting a friend's message. Instead, it was from an unknown number. "You look comfortable." She froze, her eyes scanning the room. The curtains were drawn, and she was alone, or so she thought. Her pulse quickened, but she told herself it was just a wrong number, some weird coincidence. She responded with a quick, "Who is this?" and got no reply. She put the phone down, trying to focus on the movie, but the unease lingered. The next night, it happened again. Another message from the same unknown number. "Do you ever feel like you're being watched?" Her heart skipped a beat. She typed a quick, "Stop texting me," and blocked the number, feeling a bit more in control. For a while, there were no more messages, and she hoped that was the end of it. A week passed. One quiet, windless night, as she was drifting off to sleep, her phone buzzed again. It was a new number, and the message read, "I'm closer now." The phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the floor. She sat up in bed, cold sweat running down her back. She grabbed the phone and deleted the message without replying, her hands trembling. But she couldn't sleep that night. Every creak, every gust of wind seemed amplified in the dark, empty apartment. The following evening, Jenna invited her friend Liz over for dinner. She didn't mention the texts. She didn't want to sound paranoid, and besides, Liz would probably just tell her she was overreacting. They had a nice evening, laughing and talking over takeout and wine. It almost made Jenna feel normal again. After Liz left, Jenna felt a pang of loneliness, but she brushed it aside and began cleaning up. That's when her phone buzzed again. This time, the text included a picture, blurry and dark. Her hands went cold as she realized it was a shot of her apartment window, taken from the street below. In the photo, two figures could be seen inside, laughing together, her and Liz. Her vision swam as she looked around the room, her eyes darting to the window. It was closed, but she pulled the curtain tighter and bolted the door, double-checking every lock. The texts kept coming over the next few nights, each one growing more invasive. "Do you think she'll help you?" one read, followed by another, "It's too late now." Jenna stopped sleeping, bags forming under her eyes. She began to hear strange noises at night, soft footsteps in the hallway, a faint tapping on the walls. Once, she thought she saw a shadow dart across the kitchen floor out of the corner of her eye, but when she flipped on the light, nothing was there. Then came the night when everything changed. Jenna had barely managed to fall asleep when her phone buzzed, the vibration rattling it across the nightstand. The text was just 2 words: "I'm inside." She shot up, her blood turning to ice. She listened intently, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Then she heard it. A slow, deliberate creak coming from the hallway, just outside her bedroom door. Her instincts took over, and she grabbed the phone, running into the bathroom and locking the door behind her. She held her breath, pressing her ear to the cold tile floor, listening. It was quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps padding softly down the hall growing closer. She texted Liz in a panic, her fingers barely able to hit the right keys. "Someone's in my apartment." Liz replied almost instantly, "Calling the police. Stay where you are." Jenna's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She waited, her breath shallow, every minute feeling like an hour. Then her phone buzzed again, a new text. This time, it was from her own number. It read, "Why did you lock the door, Jenna?" She felt the world tilt, her mind spinning with terror. How was that possible? She scrambled to her feet and pressed herself against the farthest wall, staring at the door handle, half expecting it to start turning on its own. Minutes dragged by, and then she heard the sound. Gentle knocking, slow and deliberate, right outside the bathroom door. Tears streamed down her face as she fought to stay silent. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. The handle jiggled, and she stifled a scream, her entire body paralyzed with fear. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. Silence. She stayed huddled there, barely daring to breathe, until the sound of distant sirens broke the stillness. Relief washed over her, and she opened the bathroom door a crack, peering out. There was no one in the hallway. She ran to the front door, unlocking it just as the police arrived. They searched the apartment, finding nothing. No sign of forced entry, no intruder, nothing missing. Jenna tried to explain the texts, but they seemed skeptical. They chalked it up to a prank, told her to get some sleep, and left. She couldn't stay in the apartment after that. Liz let her crash on her couch while Jenna made arrangements to move out. She changed her number and even bought a new phone, desperate to leave it all behind. For a while, it seemed to work. The messages stopped, and life started to feel almost normal again. Months later, Jenna had settled into a new place across town, trying to put the past behind her. One night, she was out with friends, laughing and feeling good for the first time in ages. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost didn't check it, almost let herself ignore it, but old habits die hard. It was a message from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it, her breath catching in her throat. It was a picture taken from the street, showing her and her friends in the bar, laughing together. Below the photo was a message: "I never left." She dropped the phone on the table, staring at it as if it might burst into flames. Her friends asked her what was wrong, but she couldn't answer. She just kept staring, feeling the walls close in, the air growing thick and suffocating around her. The phone buzzed again, but she didn't pick it up this time. She didn't need to. She already knew what it would say.